This TFMR podcast is brought to you by your friends at JM Bullion. Visit jmbullion.com for all your gold and silver bullion needs. Welcome back from the holidays and welcome to your first TF Metals Report podcast highlights for 2023. This is the first week of the year. There was no trading on Monday in observance of the New Year's holiday, so trading actually began on Tuesday, January the 3rd. It was a 4-day week. And boy, right out of the chute, gold soared over 1%, even though the dollar was rallying back on that first trading day of the year as well. Well, that's an interesting development, isn't it? And the chart now looks very impressive with gold getting above 1840 resistance, moving away from its 200-day moving average and setting its sight on the next resistance level up around 1880 and maybe even 1900. There was a lot to discuss back on Tuesday, January the 3rd, but one of those things we covered was that gold chart, and here's how we discussed it that day. Gold, again, big opening day. Highest close in COMEX gold since the last trading day of June, or the next to last trading day of June, June 29th or whatever that is. 6 months, and closing above 1840. You know how important that is, right? Been talking about that really through the whole month of December. Well, we finally pulled it off today. And it looks now to have broken clear. After finally using the 200-day as support, it's finally broken clear and moving higher. The chart looks pretty good. It's a ways away from a golden cross. You see it's kind of the opposite of the dollar index, the green line moving up to the red. That's still going to be a good couple of weeks away. But this looks good. And you know how important all that ladder is, 1680 to 1720 to 1760 to 1800 and then 1840. If we can sustain and hold above this line, 1880 is next. And that's been an important level for a number of years, actually. So we'll continue to watch it, but that's a good start on the year, that's for sure. Also soaring out of the gates for 2023 were the mining shares. Can you believe that? After a very difficult year, down about 10% in the GDX. Now, mind you, that's about half of what the S&P was down. But still, it was a challenging year, no doubt about that. Well, guess what? In the first 2 trading days of 2023, the GDX almost made back all of those losses, rising 7.9% just on Tuesday and Wednesday of this first trading week. So we looked at the GDX and we looked at the GDXJ on January the 4th. Finally, to the GDX and the GDXJ. Look at that. Like I said, GDX up nearly 8% year to date already. Not as dramatic as the sharp fall from late April and early May, but clearly now looks like it has broken clear of its 200-day moving average, back above 30. I wouldn't be surprised to come back and see if we test 30 for support. But as long as we remain above 30, the next target remains up here around 33. Okay? Well, that's only 6 or 8% more. Well, and we've already rallied 8%, so it's certainly plausible. And look at the GDXJ as well. 36 had been a level of support May and June, resistance November and December, blasting higher above its 200-day as well, and now today closing at the highest level since early June. Thursday the 5th brought a sharp rally in the U.S. dollar index. And then typically when the dollar's rising, it provides quite a headwind for the COMEX precious metals. As the algos react, they see the dollar go up and they sell gold and silver futures. So the dollar was rallying on Thursday, and that caused at both the 50-day and 200-day moving averages. And on top of that, the 50-day moving average is about to cross bearishly. They call it a death cross, down and through the 200-day. That's going to make an extended dollar rally pretty difficult, might lead to further dollar weakness, and further dollar weakness should help the precious metals. So that chart of the dollar index was one we discussed on Thursday, January 5. Dollar chart going back a full year after that big move today. 2 big moves, 2 big green candles out of 3 so far. And again, first time closing above 105 in about 3.5 weeks. 105, remember, is a pretty important level. You can see 105 as resistance last May, resistance in June, and then support in August. And some support really in November. So getting back above 105 is important. Really, 106 is probably more important. If it's going to rally further, that's where it's going to go, up to this confluence of the 50-day and the 200-day. But by the time it gets there, the 50-day is going to bearishly cross the 200-day. So it's going to take a remarkable surge of buying interest, or maybe selling interest in all the constituents, the euro and the like, to get through chart horizontal resistance at 106 and those two converging and bearishly crossing moving averages. So again, in terms of buying the dip, rallying into the latter part of the month and the FOMC that's in 3.5 weeks, any rally in the dollar index up to 106 would probably mark, a little temporary low in this little back off that we've had here in the precious metals beginning today. Friday, January the 6th, brings to an end the first trading week of the year. It also brought the latest BLSBS U.S. jobs report, and it was pretty dismal. Oh yeah, they're going to trumpet headline jobs over 200,000, but almost all of them, if not more, were part-time jobs. Never forget that if you quit or lose or get fired from your full-time salaried job and you replace it with 3 part-time jobs trying to make ends meet, the U.S. government considers that a net gain of 2 jobs. Wages were falling too. So the jobs report was bad enough in its own right. But then, hot on its heels, came the latest ISM service sector PMI. That number now fell sharply, is below 50, which means all 4 PMIs, the ISM and S&P manufacturing PMIs, the ISM and S&P service sector PMIs, all of them below 50, which is in contraction territory. And it means the U.S. economy is slowly going over the cliff and into the ditch. Now, that's going to have huge implications for Fed policy as we go through this year. And that was a big part of this year's macrocast, which I encourage you to read. I put out these annual forecasts every January. We released it for this year earlier this week. And if you're watching this on YouTube, the link to that page is in the description on YouTube. I strongly encourage you to check it out and give it a read, because this year is going to be a doozy. No one's expecting rate cuts, and rate cuts are coming, and no one's expecting a discussion of renewed QE, but that'll be on the table by the end of the year as well. Gold has already responded to these changes as they're coming. It is solidly as an up channel, as you can see on this final chart of the week. Continues to move higher. Pretty soon, the 50-day moving average is going to bullishly cross the 200-day moving average, and it's going to continue to trend higher. Now, it's probably going to be choppy and still in its range for a couple more months to come, so you must remain patient. But there are going to be big gains in the precious metals in the back half of this year and next year if you use 2010 and 2019 as your guide. Again, that's all written about in your annual macrocast. You can visit TF Metals Report. It's pinned to the top of the page if you want to read it. It's free for all to read, and I strongly encourage you to check it out. And then I strongly encourage you to come back next week for another one of these TF Metals Report podcast highlights as we continue to monitor what will be a very exciting year for the precious metals and the mining shares. Have a great weekend, everyone.